All right, welcome everybody. Our talk today is on wholeness, healing, and the breath of life. Our speaker is Dr. Olixn Adams. Olixn is a board-certified practitioner of family medicine and practices holistic medicine at Southern Coos Hospital in Bandon, Oregon. He uses traditional osteopathic medicine when caring for his patients in the clinic, in the hospital, and in the emergency room. Dr. Adams synthesizes the principles of Ayurveda and osteopathic medicine to provide a deeper understanding of physiology, spirituality, and the wholeness of life as it pertains to health, healing, and well-being. He's a faculty member of the Biodynamics of Osteopathy program and lectures internationally, teaching osteopathic medicine to physicians from around the world. He's also the director of the Pranada Wellness Center, a holistic healing center located at the Temple of Compassion in Burton, Texas. Our talk today is an offering of the Pranada Wellness Center, and the aim of Pranada Wellness is to empower people to care for their well-being through education, Ayurvedic and osteopathic treatments, and other holistic wellness modalities. Our next retreat will be held in a few weeks, and there are still a few spots available for that. So I'll post a link to that if you're interested in the chat section. And without any further ado, I'll hand it over to Olixn. Thank you, Olixn, for being with us.
Thank you, Rosa. Thank you, everyone. It's nice to spend a little time with you. Let us take a moment and close our eyes, thinking of God and Guru, thinking of our breath, the one who's breathing, thinking of the great physicians who've come before us, who've given us this wisdom and knowledge for health, healing, which helps us also to deepen our sadhana and our meditation. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. I hope that we'll maintain a nice connection through this talk this afternoon. Our internet service is actually down. We've had an atmospheric river blowing over recently, and we've gotten a tremendous amount of rain and moisture, and some of the services are down in our area. So fortunately, I've been able to hotspot in with the telephone, and it seems to be working okay. If we drop the connection, we'll try to get it reconnected as quickly as possible, but it's a little bit spotty with this atmospheric river. And an atmospheric river is an interesting phenomenon, and it even ties in a little bit to our topic today. You know, everybody has their own atmosphere. We create an atmosphere around ourselves with our breath and with our thoughts and with our actions. So we're all kind of a microclimate that's interfacing with other climates. And you can tell what somebody's atmosphere is pretty quickly and easily. Most people can tell that somebody's in a stormy mood or in a bad mood, or they're in a sunny mood or a sunny disposition. And if we think about these climates and this weather in the natural world and an atmospheric river, we can think about what is one of the biggest influences on the weather is the wind, is the air, is the breath. And so everything in the natural world is breathing, and there's this breath going on in the environment that's creating the weather patterns and creating the movements of life. And it's the same in our own microclimate. Our breath has a tremendous effect on our environment and on our climate and on our health. In fact, everything in the world is breathing. Everything in a natural world, everything in creation, everything is breathing without exception. Breath is life, and without breath, there's no life. So it's not just our lungs that are breathing, it's not just the movement of the air, but it's actually every organ is breathing, every cell is breathing. And there's different types of breath that we think about in osteopathic medicine and Ayurvedic medicine too. We think about different types of breath that are actually creating and sustaining the whole of creation. In osteopathy, we think about three primary breaths that are supporting and creating all of life. There's actually more, but there's three main ones that we think about. So the obvious one when we think of breath is the gross breath, the movement of the air, the use of the lungs, the movement of the diaphragm. And we call that thoracic respiration because it's involving a lot of movement in the thoracic region, and it's the movement of the lungs, the movement of the air. There's a lot more to thoracic respiration than meets the eye. We're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail. It's not a mechanical event. It's actually a very spiritual event. So then we have this other breathing. You could call it cellular breathing or pranic breathing. There's this subtle breathing of all the cells, all the tissues, and all the fluids in the body are breathing at a particular rate. It's a slow, soft, sweet breathing that's essential to life. And it actually precedes the thoracic respiration that we talked about first. When we're in utero, when we're an embryo and then a fetus waiting to be born into the world, it's actually this cellular breathing that is there first. And so often in osteopathic medicine, we call this primary respiration, not because it's more important than thoracic respiration, but it's because it came first. It's primary. It came before the thoracic respiration. And this breathing continues on throughout our entire life. And you can actually, this breathing is part of the breathing of the whole of the natural world. So this breathing is going on in the trees and in the plants and in the rocks. Everything in the natural world is breathing in this way, along with our cells and our organs and our fluid. Everything is breathing through this pranic breath. Then we have a breath that's even comes before these two. So we have this thoracic breathing, we have this pranic breathing, and we have a breath that's even more fundamental to life, more fundamental to who we are and how we function. And that's called the breath of life. And it's well known in many spiritual traditions. In the Kathopanishad, they say this whole world, whatever there is vibrating, having originated from the Maha Prana, or the breath of life. So this breath of life is called by different names in different traditions, but it's saying the same thing. It could be called the breath of life. It could be called Krishna Prana, Maha Prana, Shakti Prana, Mahamaya. The names go on, but they're all describing that there is something that breathed into creation and it continues to breathe. And without that breathing, the whole of creation would dissolve. It's sustaining the whole of life as one movement passing through everything. This is a very important breath when we're treating people osteopathically. We're thinking about this all the time as the source of all breath, the source of all life. So this breath comes into creation and actually then creates the five pranas. So prior to the five pranas is the Maha Prana, or the breath of life. And then you get Udana, Prana, Samana, Apana, and Vyana. All these beautiful five pranas that each have their own function, their own expression, are coming from one breath. So it's one breath that's giving all the other breaths. It's very important in health that these other breaths, the five pranas, are connected to and organized by the Maha Prana, or the breath of life. And that's something we take into account and evaluate when we evaluate a patient when they're having a health problem or a concern or an imbalance. And then the five major pranas give rise to the five minor pranas. So you have these 10 pranas in the body, but they're all connected to the breath of life. So actually, every breath is connected to the breath of life. Even thoracic respiration, primary respiration, the five pranas are all connected to the breath of life. That's important because the breath of life is very subtle. Not everybody feels it or perceives it. And even if you perceive it sometimes, it can be difficult to perceive it all the time because of how subtle it is. But because all the breaths are connected, if you're in touch with thoracic respiration, if you're in touch with your breathing, you're connected to the breath of life. They're all connected. They're not separate. They can't be separate. They can only function when they're connected as one breath. So this breath of life comes into existence. It starts to breathe creation, and it brings forth three currents of life. It has a positive current, it has a negative current, and it has a neutral current. And these three currents then become the foundation, the essence, and the building block for all of life. These three currents are essential. They have to be there in balance. They express themselves in the body, in the physical form. We see these three currents express themselves as the Ida, the Pingala, and the Sushumna. So the Pingala channel is the channel that's on the right. It's a positive current. It's also the solar channel. It creates activity, and it's essential for movement, creation, and activity. So the breath of life is bringing forth three primary fundamental forces: a creative force, a sustaining force, and a destructive force. And these three forces need to be in balance in our physiology for us to have health at all times. So at all times inside of our physiology, inside of our bodies, there's something being created, there's something being destroyed, and there's something being sustained and maintained at all times. If we look at the bones, for example, the bones are actually being destroyed by cells called osteoclasts. They're actually absorbing bone. And there's other cells creating bone, osteoblasts. So you have this destruction and this creation going on at the same time, all the time, which is very important because the bones need to change shape. They need to change their strength, their dynamics based on what's being asked of them at the time. If you take up a new sport or a new occupation or a new activity, the demands on your body and on your bones are different than they were last year or 2 years ago or 5 years ago. So the intelligence of the breath of life will recognize this, and it'll activate these osteoclasts and destroy some bones, and it'll activate some osteoblasts and build up some bones in other places. So there's this dynamic happening all the time. There's this breathing happening all the time. The bones are breathing, and they should breathe. And if they can't breathe, we end up with pathology, such as osteoporosis or other problems that can arise when something can't breathe. Breath is life. Without breath, there's no life. So we have these three currents coming from the breath of life: a positive, a negative, and a neutral. And the spiritual people, they like to accentuate or find that neutral current, because that neutral current is what brings the sense of organization, of peace, of well-being, of health, and balance. Some people have a predominance of the positive current in their life, and they're very active, and they're busy in the world doing different things that are also important. So when a physician evaluates a patient, we evaluate the breath is one of the things that we evaluate. And there's many things about the breath that we evaluate. It's not just, oh, are they breathing? Breathing's fundamental. Without the breath, even allopathic medicine recognizes this as a fundamental. We teach medical students when they're in the emergency room ABCs: airway, breathing, circulation. Always the first thing that's evaluated in any situation is, are they breathing? But beyond that, beyond is the air moving, we can look at many things about the breath, and it will tell many things about the health, the physiology, the state of the mind, and the overall condition of the patient. So we can look at the rate of the breathing. Are they breathing fast or are they breathing slow? Generally, when we're breathing fast, the mind is more restless and more active. And when we're breathing slower, the mind, the thoughts tend to be calmer and slower. We're looking at the volume of the breath. Is not only the rate, but is a good amount of air and prana moving in and out, or is it small and feeble? We're looking at the shape of the breath. Did you know every breath has a shape? When you breathe in, that breath actually contains a shape that you can feel. And each breath is unique. There are no two breaths that are the same. Each breath is like a snowflake. Each breath is a gift in the moment just for you. Each of your breaths, each breath is given from the breath of life, the perfect breath for the moment. And no two breaths are the same. Each breath has its own rate, its own shape, its own rhythm, its own expression of the three currents. So we're looking at this, the rate, the shape, the volume, and then the quality. And by the quality, what of the three currents is being expressed? Is it a neutral current? Is it a peaceful current? Is it an active current? Is it the positive current? Or is it the dull current that's putting somebody more into sleep? So we look at this when we're evaluating the patient. And a lot of information is revealed about the state of the health. The breath, even the thoracic respiration, is having an effect on all the levels of life, all the levels of life. So it's having an effect on the physical body, the astral body, the causal body, the mind, the emotions. We mostly perceive the effect it's having on the physical body because that's easy to perceive, but it's actually the breath, the breathing is affecting all the levels, whether we're aware of it or not, which is one of the reasons that pranayamas and Kriya pranayama has such a profound effect on so many levels because it's affecting all the levels of life. It's not just the physical level, it's also the more subtle levels. So the physician will evaluate the breath all the time in the patient, along with the pulse and all the levels of the pulse and all the levels of the breath, because they're really one. The pulse and the breath are really one. We can examine them and separate out different phenomenon, but evaluating the breath or evaluating the pulse is really the same thing, and they're intimately connected. We can evaluate our own breath. Everybody has the capacity for healing, and I say there is a healer in everyone. Everyone is a healer at some level. Um, at the hospital where I work, some of the best healers are the housekeepers. And they come in and clean the patient's room. And they are there just in service. And they sometimes have a calmness and a love that's coming through them. The atmosphere that they bring forth, that they're creating, the patients pick up on it a little bit. And the patients do well. And some of these people are extraordinary healers. So everybody has some capacity, and there's an inner physician in everyone. Our true self, our highest, truest self, knows what we need and knows how we're doing and knows what's needed to create a deeper level of balance, because it's creating the life, it's creating the balance. So we have the capacity to do our own little evaluation of the breath. And we can notice the breath and start to evaluate it in ourselves just as we're sitting here. It doesn't take anything special. We're made to feel this. We're made to appreciate our breath and feel our breath at all the different levels of life, not just the gross movement of the air, but all the different levels of the breath. We're made to feel and to appreciate and to experience and to relate to. The breath is fundamental, it's essential to life. In one of the scriptures, Devi asked Shiva, in this universe, who's the greatest friend of man? And Shiva replies, Prana is the greatest friend of man. Prana is the greatest companion. O fair one, there is no closer friend in this universe than prana. So when we're breathing, we should take care of our breath. We should notice our breath and we should love our breath. And that's really the first step in evaluating or noticing our breath, is just to appreciate it. Sometimes right away people want to change something about their breath. The first thing is just to acknowledge the breath and appreciate it. Each breath is unique. Each breath is a prayer. Each breath is a gift. Each breath is the living expression of the divine in you and through you, and it's your companion. And when we acknowledge this companionship, it accentuates the relationship. It accentuates the neutral quality of the breath. The sattvic quality of the breath begins to neutralize, express itself in a greater capacity. So our first step when we want to evaluate our breath or appreciate our breath is just to start with an appreciation, not trying to change it. Then we can appreciate the shape of the breath. Sometimes you can get a sense of how it feels as it's coming in. You can appreciate how far the exhale is going into the space and how far it's returning. You can appreciate which of the three currents is dominant. This can be done by just noticing which nostril is more open, which, if you're breathing through your nose, which channel is more open. So you can check and see if you're in the right side, you've got the rajasic positive current going. If you're on the left side, you've got the Ida current, the lunar current, the negative current is flowing. And sometimes it's the middle. The Sushumna is open and both sides are equal. And there's many ways to balance that. There's the practices of Kriya Yoga. There's different pranayamas to bring that into balance. So we can appreciate that when we're evaluating our breath. Another thing that we can appreciate and evaluate that's very important is when we breathe in, where does the breath stop? When we breathe in, a normal breath would go all the way through the whole body. It actually comes in and goes in all directions, and there's not a sense of a stop point. It just diffuses, the breath diffuses through the whole body. So it breathes all the way to the toes and all the way to the top of the head. And this has been scientifically shown. We've evaluated some people through an otoscope, looking at the inside the eyes. And people who are very neutral, who have the Sushumna is open and the neutral current is flowing nicely, there's actually a little subtle rising of the eyeballs with the inhalation. And there's a subtle rising of actually everything in the body is getting this subtle movement with this thoracic respiration, with this breathing. So you can actually feel this levitating, lifting, suspensory effect that's coming from the prana, that's coming from the breathing. So the air is not the prana. Air and prana are not the same thing. When we breathe in, we feel the movement of the air, but within the air is the prana. And the prana then comes into the body and gets distributed in all directions. So when we breathe in, there's often a place that we feel the breath just kind of gets to and doesn't go any further. We call it a stop point. We kind of use our diaphragm as the reference point, which is right in the middle of the rib cage. And we just get a sense when we breathe in, is this stop point above the diaphragm, at the diaphragm, or below the diaphragm when we're breathing in. This will tell a lot about the state of mind, the state of the nervous system, the state of the health, and our receptivity to life. Because a normal breath will go at least to the pelvis, if not all the way to the toes. You won't feel a stop point until the breath gets to the pelvis or the knees or the toes. That's a normal breath. When the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight nervous system, is activated, and the Pingala channel is more activated, the stop point of this breath will be at the diaphragm or above. And you can feel it. You breathe in and it just feels like you're not getting a full breath. And people who have a lot of anxiety will come in and they'll say, I just feel like I can't get a full breath. Well, it's true they can't because they've got this stop point here. What the stop point is the excess sympathetic charge, or to say it in Ayurvedic terms, the vata dosha has to get deposited in the empty spaces. Okay? So when we're under a condition of stress, anxiety, overwork, fatigue, it activates the Pingala channel. It activates the sympathetic nervous system. And this energy of the sympathetic nervous system has to be distributed safely throughout the body. If it all goes to one place, it'll create disease. If it all goes to the brainstem, it'll create a seizure. So this vata dosha, this sympathetic nervous energy, has to get distributed or deposited somewhere. And what we've learned is it gets deposited in the empty spaces. This is a fundamental principle in osteopathic medicine and in Ayurvedic medicine, that the excess dosha, the excess charge, will get deposited in the empty spaces because that's where it's safe. That's where it can be placed without causing too much physiological damage until it builds up in excess in the empty space, and then it has to begin to circulate in the general circulation of the physiology, and then we get more problems. So one of the empty spaces is a potential space between the thoracic cavity and the abdominal cavity, right where the diaphragm is. There's a little tiny space, a little space. And in that space is the prana of life, but also an empty space that this excess energy can get deposited. And so the sympathetic charge will get deposited into this space. And it'll actually create a barrier. When you breathe in, you feel the air, the movement of the prana and the air and the life force just doesn't go any further. It's a stop point. Okay. So if you notice a stop point somewhere, not to worry, don't get fussed up about it. It's okay, it needed to be there. But we can begin to support and allow it to change on its own. This change will occur as we come into balance and allow the sattvic quality of the breath to express itself. And as the sattvic quality of the breath expresses itself, we start to breathe through the Sushumna. We start to breathe through the center. And as we breathe through the center, the breath naturally starts to change. And it starts to come lower and lower into the abdomen. And you start to feel the stop point moving towards the lower abdomen and the pelvis. So how do we accentuate this sattvic quality of the breath? How do we get in touch with the neutral current of the breath of life? That's what we're really talking about, is we're connecting to the breath of life through thoracic respiration, through our breathing. We're connecting in with the essence of life, the breath of life, Maha Prana, Krishna Prana. So the first thing we do is we just appreciate the breath. Gratitude, you could say gratitude is the great flow. Grateful is great flow. When we become grateful, things start to flow. So the breath starts to flow in its natural way. So we start to become grateful for the breath as a gift. We start to become grateful for whatever you're grateful for in your life. That's the first step. I mentioned earlier, there are different pranayamas that can be done to balance. And those are great. Those are fine if you want to practice pranayamas we're not going to go into that today. There's many places you can go to study and learn those. They're beautiful, they're wonderful. I know Dr. Lod has a DVD that you can get that discusses all the pranayamas. What we're talking about today is just getting ourselves attuned and dialed into the sattvic quality of the breath of life, and it will naturally start to express itself. It's a frequency, it's a vibration, and we attune ourselves to it. Our first step is gratitude, and then just appreciating the capacity of the breath to change and to regulate. Also, as we breathe, we can appreciate that everything is breathing, right? So it's not my breath. Actually, the reality is we're being breathed. Sometimes we think that I am breathing, but if we go into a little bit more subtle breath, a little more subtle appreciation, we can actually start to get the sensation that we're being breathed. The breath is being given and we're being breathed. Not only are we being breathed, but the whole of creation is being breathed. And so I can begin to appreciate from my center all the way out to the horizon, everything is breathing. Everything is breathing on one breath. And as I appreciate this, it will start to bring the sattvic quality of the breath. It will start to accentuate the neutral current of the breath of life. And you'll start to breathe a little bit more through your center. And you'll start to feel your breath calming, balancing, harmonizing. And you'll start to feel that you're breathing more through the center. And you might notice that the two channels come into balance in the left and right. The nostrils, you're breathing more evenly between the two. And it's a natural process. It's very easy. We're made for this. So all we've done is appreciate our breath, get some gratitude and some prayer, and appreciate that everything is being breathed on one breath. Now, this will also start to change your pranic breathing. The pranic breathing we were talking about earlier, the primary respiration will actually start to slow down and breathe at a deeper, slower rate. That's now breathing in tune with the whole of nature. We said everything is breathing. Many indigenous cultures, the Aboriginals and many indigenous cultures recognize this breathing of the natural world. And they talk about a breath that comes off the horizon and passes through everything. And that breath, they say, brings the meaning of the moment. And when they can't feel that breath, they become very distraught, very disturbed, very depressed even, because that breath is bringing them the meaning of the moment. We studied this breath in osteopathic medicine and found that it breathes at about 50 seconds for an inhalation and 50 seconds for an exhalation. So it's actually been scientifically documented and proven repeatedly that the natural world is breathing at a very particular, nice, slow rate. That doesn't mean we have to make our thoracic respiration breathe at that slow rate, but we just appreciate that there is this other breathing and we're synchronized with that breathing. And when we get synchronized with that breathing, it changes our whole physiology. It changes our entire health. It puts us in tune with the natural world. It awakens our instincts. So sometimes our instincts are actually a little bit suppressed. For example, if you've been thirsty and haven't been drinking water, or you've had to use the bathroom but couldn't and you held it, or anything like that, you're suppressing the instincts a little bit. And when we suppress the instincts, they get a little bit dull, and then they're not available for us to listen to and to respond to, because these instincts are bringing information about our physiology. As we get more in touch with these instincts of the natural world and our breathing gets harmonized, we start to awaken an intelligence in our bodies and our minds that puts us into balance naturally. We start to awaken to the food that we need, the flavors that we need, the tastes that we need, the time we should go to sleep, the time that we should wake up. All of these things start to fall into a natural order because we're getting in tune with the breath of life. We're getting in tune with that which creates the order, with that which maintains the order. Now, if we perceive the breath of life directly as it's passing through, wonderful. But sometimes we need to approach it through thoracic respiration, just through our natural breathing. So we're evaluating our breath, we're evaluating our breathing, and we're noticing where the stop point is. We're noticing which channel is open. We're noticing if we're in harmony with the breathing of the natural world. These are all things that an osteopathic physician evaluates in their patients when we give a treatment. And when we find an imbalance, we work to help to create it or restore the balance. These are some of the things we work with at the Pranada retreats that we do, in the Pranada programs. Any time an osteopathic physician gives a treatment, they're often evaluating these things. But you have your own inner physician, your own inner guru, your own inner wisdom. You can begin to notice and evaluate these things. Okay. So as the breath starts to get calm and starts to move lower, we feel the stop point is no longer way up high. And maybe for some of you, it's already changed. It doesn't take a lot of effort. In fact, the effort actually can make it slower. It's more an appreciation. It's more an acknowledgement of the divinity of the breath as the incarnation of the divine in you. The divine is incarnating in you all the time through the breath. So as this breath starts to move lower, we just watch it and appreciate it and let it continue on its own. If you try to push it down, it slows it down. It actually reverses and comes up. It's kind of funny because sometimes once it gets down in the pelvis, it feels so good. It feels so nice. It feels so natural. And we feel so good. And then once it's there, it'll stay there a long time. But maybe we get in a stressful situation and we kind of lose that sense and we want to have it back. And so people will go and they'll start to try to push it down. That actually is a slower way. It actually fusses up the breath. So it actually, the best way is just appreciating and observing and following these few principles that we've talked about of acknowledging gratitude, prayer, appreciating the breath as one breath for the whole of the natural world. So as it starts to come lower into the abdomen, the breath starts to get a little softer, more balanced. And we can appreciate that there's this subtle, soft, sweet breathing in the center of our being. In the very center of who we are, there's an almost imperceptible breath, which is an expression of our truest self. Everything is breathing. And there's a sound that's associated with this breath. There's a very well-known and beautiful meditation called Soham meditation. And the Soham meditation is organized to bring us in touch with this beautiful, soft inner breath. So Soham came about because the ancient sages and rishis, when they went into their deepest meditations and appreciated the sound of the breathing in the causal and astral realms, they heard the sound Soham. So on the inhalation was a So, and on the exhalation, a hum. But so hum is being repeated with our words, so it's not the exact sound. So hum, you can chant it as you're breathing, as so on the inhalation and hum on the exhalation. But to really get the essence of so hum meditation, we want to hear the sound coming from within us. You want to hear your own so hum. Each of us has its own so hum that is unique. There's no two so hums that are the same. So your so hum is unique to you, and so hum can kind of start us in the right direction because it's an approximation of the sound. But we want to find this subtle, gentle, beautiful breath that's coming from the center of who we are. We're breathing this sattvic breath through our midline, through our center, this breathing, and then listening for this beautiful sound. And you can use so hum to kind of lead you in the right direction. We use it to kind of lead us in the direction, but we have to listen for the sound. If you practice Kriya Yoga, you can listen for the divine sound. And as the divine sound connects with the breath and becomes one, which they are already, but as it connects in our mind as one, in our experience as one, you'll get the divine sound and the so hum sound as you breathe. And this will have a beautiful effect on the entire physiology, the entire mind. It has a profound healing effect. I've seen people come off of blood pressure medication by learning to breathe properly. I've seen many chronic illnesses, migraine headaches, anxiety, depression. I teach all the patients how to breathe. It's so essential to life. And we go into this in more detail in the Pranada programs. But these are some of the basic steps to put us in touch with the breath of life through thoracic respiration. So we've gone from the gross to the subtle to the more subtle to the essence of the breath. Breath is life. Without breath, there is no life. So I think we'll have a chance to see if anybody has any questions from what we've talked about. These talks are sponsored by Pranada Wellness Center, and they're free talks for anyone who wants to join, and we're happy to share with you. Pranada is headquartered at the Temple of Compassion in Texas, and we offer a healing program retreat, 5 days, once a year, usually in the springtime. This year, we're the last week of March. I've heard there's a couple spots left, so if anybody wants to join late, we'd love to see you. We have a really great team of physicians and practitioners. Participants will get Shirodhara treatments, osteopathic consultation evaluation, Ayurvedic consultation evaluation, tridoshic meals. Really good menu this year. The kitchen team's been putting a lot of time and effort into planning out really great tridoshic meals. There's also 3 meditations every day, yoga asana daily, an educational talk every day on topics like what we just discussed, where we try to awaken our own healing potentials, where we try to awaken our own inner wisdom so that life is our medicine. All of life becomes our medicine. And medicine is our healing, and healing, at Pranada, we say healing is a movement to wholeness. And so healing cannot happen in isolation. by definition, if healing is a movement into wholeness, you can't do it alone. You have to do it in your community, in the world, because everything is moving into wholeness, and we don't move into wholeness by ourselves. So to have a community to come together and spend 5 days healing together, learning about the principles of health and healing, it's very, very powerful, very beautiful. Many people have had wonderful healings and experiences. It's also wonderful that the program is at the TOC, the Temple of Compassion, which is on 111 acres. We've got the cows, the Brahmin cows, the blessings of Guru, and the support of the monastics, and a very pristine natural environment. It's a very unique and powerful healing environment. And as far as I know, the only place in the United States, if not the world, that has the principles of osteopathy synthesized with the principles of Ayurveda and yoga. And that's a really beautiful combination that really brings us in touch with the wholeness of life and who we really are in that movement into wholeness. So thank you to Pranada for sponsoring these talks and helping us share all of this with you. So let's see if there are any questions.
It looks like we have some questions coming in through the chat. And if you want to ask a question with your voice, you can raise your hand. There's a function in Zoom to do that. So you're welcome to do either of them. I'll go to the first question that's coming through the chat. It's from Alina. She says she has a deviated septum and is wondering if it affects her mental state with more analytical left brain overstimulation due to airflow going through one nostril. Do you have any advice on balancing the breath flow? She does alternate nostril breathing sometimes.
Yeah. It has a small effect, but that effect can be overcome because the essence of the breath is the breath of life. And the breath of life is breathing through you all the time. And we also have this pranic breathing. It's breathing slowly and in and out. And all of these bring the sattvic quality of the breath, which is most essential. So as you tune in to the sattvic current of life and the sattvic quality of thoracic respiration and the sattvic foods, this challenge is overcome. This imbalance will become a more balanced and will not cause so much trouble. The alternate nose breathing is good and is fine. Also, the Supernasia nose drops are very, very beneficial. You can get them from either Pranada Wellness Center or the Ayurvedic Institute. But most important is attuning to the sattvic quality of the breath, not to be so concerned about the mechanical effect of which nostril the breath is moving through more, because that's a physical limitation. And the more important essence of the breath is more subtle than that. And so as we appreciate that we're breathing, as you appreciate this subtle breath coming from your center, and as you appreciate the breath moving lower down in towards the abdomen, as the stop point we were talking about moves lower, you'll actually be accentuating the sattvic quality of the breath, and the Sushumna will be opening regardless of a deviated septum. In the meantime, we just do the best we can with that. So not to worry. It's the quality of the breath, the essence of the breath that's far more important than the mechanics. Thank you.
Our next question is from Gayatri. She's asking, can spinal stenosis be reversed through breath?
So spinal stenosis is a condition where the bones have started to deposit more of their material at the area where the nerve comes out of the canal. So there's a little canal that the nerve comes out of, and we get some buildup of material there. Now, I say any condition has the possibility of being reversed. The question is how far along it is and how what the other causes are. So we're looking at a condition that's sympathetic dominant or vata dominated, and the bones have lost their capacity to breathe. So we said everything's breathing. We have a big breath, the Maha Prana, that's breathing through everything all the time. Then we have 5 major pranas, then we have 5 minor pranas, and even more beyond that. And then every cell, every tissue, every organ is breathing. And sometimes a tissue, such as bone, will lose some of its capacity to breathe. That can be from an injury, a mechanical event, stress, lifestyle, diet. Many things can go into effect. There's no doubt that a sattvic breath will help every condition in the body. That wouldn't promise a cure for spinal stenosis, but it would improve the prognosis and help. I've had many patients with spinal stenosis, and we treat them osteopathically. We teach them how to breathe. We get them on proper diet, exercise, and many of them are able to avoid surgery. Some of them reverse, some of them the progress slows down, and some of them we delay surgery for some years. So it's very individual, but there's no doubt that proper breathing and a sattvic quality of life will help. So you want to feel the bones breathing. Once you get that sense of breath, go to allow that beautiful soft breath to come from the center. And the more you feel that, the more everything gets into a neutral state and starts to respond to all of the breath. Thank you. I wish you well with that.
Thank you, Olixn. Okay, next question is from Lee. How can physical osteopathic manipulation help a vestibular migraine? How many times per week should osteopathic manipulation take place? What Ayurvedic medication could help? This is a big question. Also asking about food and homeopathics. Any other thoughts you have about that? Vestibular.
Yeah, that's a very big question. The essential principle of any holistic medicine, 2 essential principles, maybe 3. One essential principle is are we still connected okay?
We're okay. Yeah, please
Okay,
continue.
that's all right. I was concerned about our tenuous streaming. So some essential principles. One is restoring balance. 2 is a movement to wholeness. And 3 is recognizing the health or the perfection that's always there, regardless of any symptom. So Ayurvedic medicine, osteopathic medicine can help with vestibular migraines. The treatment is going to be individualized for each person. There's not a standard protocol because we have to find where the imbalance is and the movement of life, how the movement of life is taking each person back into their balance point. But this is often a vata condition. The vata is high. And so we want to look at ways to restore the balance of the vata dosha, to restore the harmony of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, the Ida and the Pingala channel. So anything that brings about a sense of balance, rest, calmness, this type of breathing is very helpful. Magnesium can be very helpful in these types of headaches. There is some special magnesiums that help absorb more easily across the blood-brain barrier. There are herbs, but I would be hesitant to just recommend a broad prescription of herbs, because an herb needs to be specific for a person based on their dosha. Oleation can be good. So getting oil on the skin, sesame oil, for example, especially in the winter months, is very soothing to the nervous system. And there's a magnesium, chelated magnesium called Neuromag. Designs for Health makes it, and it's a magnesium that's been shown scientifically to pass the blood-brain barrier more than other magnesiums. And we found that many people with migraines, be it vestibular or other types, have benefit with this. So the importance of staying well hydrated, the importance of balancing the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, the importance of getting good rest, and restoring the natural balance. And then from there, if you work with the practitioner, be that an osteopathic physician, an Ayurvedic physician, they can give very specific recommendations based on what is needed for each individual as they have their journey back into balance and into wholeness. Thank you.
And I don't see any other questions coming in. If you do have a question, you can feel free to put it in the chat now, raise your hand. You can also start your video and raise your real hand. And yeah, thank you, Cheryl. Cheryl just had a beautiful comment saying that the immersion into this retreat, the spring retreat, I'm assuming she's referring to, that's coming up in a few weeks, is designed to create an understanding of these processes that is very deep and is a transformational experience. And yeah, I cannot agree with you more, Cheryl. I'm going to go ahead with that little segue and put in the chat a link to learn more about the spring retreat. That's going to be happening March 22nd through the 29th at the Temple of Compassion. There's a few spots left available. Olixn is going to be there serving with a beautiful team of osteopathic physicians. And we'll have Ayurvedic classes and Shirodhara treatments that all the participants are going to be getting to. So that's there for you in the chat. Anything else you want to say?
Any other comments?
Nope, not yet.
Well, very good. It's been nice to spend a little time with everybody. And hopefully you'll have a little bit more appreciation of the beauty and the gift and the magnificence that each breath is and that each breath brings. With each inhalation, we have a prayer. With each inhalation, we have an opportunity to be more in our true state, more in the wholeness of life. And I thank you for your interest, and I thank you for the time and opportunity to share with you. And from the whole of the Pranada team, we thank you, and we thank all of the crew and the team of the Pranada team. Is the program, the talks would not be possible without the whole team. So thank you to everyone who's serving on the Pranada team. And if there's no other questions, we can close with the prayer. No more questions.
Just lots of gratitude coming in. Thanking you. Yeah. And thank you so much, Arlene, for bringing us back to our breath. Yeah.
Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, Rosa. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.